This story is a work of fiction, inspired by real events. Names, dates, locations, and identifying details have been changed or dramatized to protect privacy and enhance the narrative. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, is purely coincidental or used fictitiously. This content is intended for entertainment and educational purposes only. It does not aim to glorify crime, promote violence, or pass judgment on real individuals. Viewer discretion is advised. Some scenes may contain mature, disturbing, or triggering content. What you are about to watch could have happened anywhere, to anyone. It's inspired by real events. Whispers of truth, buried beneath layers of fiction. We've changed the names, the dates, the locations. But the emotions, the betrayal, the fear, those are real. This story is not meant to accuse, only to reveal, to make you question, who do you really trust? If stories like this keep you thinking, long after they end, hit subscribe, smash like, and drop your theory in the comments. Now watch closely, before the truth disappears again.
It began with laughter, the kind that fills a house and makes you forget that life can ever turn dark. A Texas morning, sunlight spilling through half-open curtains. The smell of pancakes, the hiss of coffee on the stove, and the sweet, easy rhythm of family. The twins raced barefoot through the hallway, their laughter echoing like music. And on the porch, their grandmother watched, smiling, steady, proud. To anyone passing by, it was the picture of love. The kind of love that feels unshakable. Neighbors waved and called her Mama June. They said she'd do anything for those boys. And for years, everyone believed she did. But sometimes, evil doesn't come through the door. Sometimes, it grows quietly in the very heart of the home, smiling while it destroys. When detectives arrived, they weren't just walking into a family's tragedy, they were stepping into a mystery so tangled, it would take forensics, confessions, and months of unraveling to learn the truth. Because behind that smile, behind those walls of love and trust, was something no one in Texas could have imagined. June Patterson's story began long before the headlines. At 16, she was already a mother, and already marked. The boys she loved disappeared before her belly showed, and the whispers that followed were loud enough to fill every pew at Mount Olive Baptist. The congregation prayed for her one Sunday and pitied her the next. By 32, June had hardened into something steel-bright, no mistakes, no mercy, no excuses. Her daughter LaToya grew up beneath that steel. Curfews weren't suggestions, they were scripture. June watched her like a guard at a gate, believing strictness could save a child from shame. But history has a mean way of circling back. At 16, LaToya met a boy at the county fair. A few dances, a secret, and a silence, and suddenly, the same story was playing again. When June found out, it was too late for church or punishment. The ultrasound showed 2 heartbeats. Twins. Her fury melted the first time she held them. Malik and Miles, 2 tiny miracles, brown-skinned, loud-lunged, perfect. She promised she'd give them what no one gave her, stability, Sunday dinners, a future worth keeping. The years rolled by with the sound of gospel on Saturday mornings and the smell of fried okra drifting down Willow Creek Road. LaToya worked 2 jobs, June kept the boys fed and the house spotless. To the neighbors, she was Mama June, the woman who'd been through fire and come out singing. But behind that porch light, the air grew heavier. June started drinking, just a little something to take the edge off. The twins became her purpose, and her possession. When LaToya left for Dallas to chase steadier work, she promised it was temporary. The twins were 4. Months turned into years, and the house stayed full, of noise, of memories, of a love that didn't always feel safe. 17 years later, Malik and Miles were men, 21, restless, protective of the grandmother who had raised them. They still called her Mama June, half joke, half truth. From the outside, they looked inseparable, a proud black family stitched together by resilience. Inside, cracks ran deeper than anyone knew. Neighbors noticed her watching them with a strange intensity. Some said she was overprotective. Others said she was lonely. In small-town Texas, folks whisper over fences, but no one asks questions out loud, not about family. What no one saw was the quiet decay of trust, the unspoken guilt, the isolation, the fear of being left behind. It wasn't violence yet. It was pressure, slow, invisible, waiting. Investigators would later write in their reports that the living room smelled of lavender and bleach. The same scent neighbors remembered on calm Sunday afternoons. Even comfort, it turns out, can cling to tragedy. For now, the Pattersons were still just that, a family. Laughter at dinner. Old vinyl spinning on a scratched record player. The rhythm of life, fragile but still holding. But curses don't announce themselves. They whisper. They wait. And on Willow Creek Road, the past was almost done waiting. When the laughter finally died, it didn't echo, it vanished, as if the house itself refused to remember. The night before had been too quiet. No music from the radio, no laughter from the porch, just the steady creak of the ceiling fan and the sigh of wind against the windows. Neighbors noticed the living room light burning past midnight, but in Willow Creek, no one questioned the Pattersons. They were the kind of family you respected, and left alone. By morning, the air felt heavier. June's porch light, still off. Mail untouched. Curtains closed. The quiet had weight now. Even the sound of cicadas seemed smaller, as if nature itself was holding its breath. By noon, LaToya's phone had already rung 6 times. Her sons hadn't answered since the night before, and her mother's number went straight to voicemail. June wasn't the type to stay silent, not for this long. At first, LaToya tried to rationalize it. Maybe her mom was napping. Maybe the twins were running errands. But the longer the silence lasted, the more it sounded like warning. She clocked out early, tossed her uniform jacket into the passenger seat, and started the drive from Dallas. The sky was heavy with cloud. Gospel static filled the car, the kind her mama used to hum to on long Sundays. Every mile back to Willow Creek felt like driving into a memory she didn't want to revisit. The house appeared the same, small, still, and safe-looking. But the closer she got, the more wrong it felt. The porch swing moved though the air was still. A glass lay on its side near the steps. The front door stood slightly ajar. "Mama," she called, stepping inside. Her voice echoed into the quiet. The smell hit her first, bleach, stale liquor, and something metallic beneath it. The air was thick, clinging to her skin. The living room was spotless. Too spotless. The twin sneakers lined up near the couch. Dishes washed and stacked. Gospel vinyl still spinning softly, its needle ticking at the end of the record. The wall clock had stopped at 2:47. She almost laughed at herself, overreacting again, she thought. Then she stepped forward and her foot brushed against something soft. She looked down. Her scream carried down Willow Creek Road, slicing through the stillness. A neighbor dropped a grocery bag, another ran for their phone. Within minutes, red and blue lights painted the white walls of the Patterson home. Detective Carla Moore was the first to arrive, calm, steady, and heartbreakingly familiar. She'd once coached the twins at a church safety class years earlier. Now, her badge glinted under the porch light as she stepped inside. What she saw stopped her mid-breath. 2 young men, gone. Their grandmother, still alive, lying in the back bedroom, pulse faint, face pale. The smell of chemicals was overwhelming. A half-empty bottle of rum lay on the floor beside the bed. Paramedics worked in tense silence. The sound of a zipper, the flick of a camera flash, the soft murmur of vitals being called out, every noise landed heavy in that small house. Detective Moore turned slowly, taking everything in. No broken locks. No forced entry. No sign of robbery. This wasn't a stranger's crime, it was something born inside the walls. By 4 p.m., the scene was sealed. Crime scene unit entered, gloved hands, measured steps, voices low. They began cataloging, photographs first, then swabs, fibers, fingerprints. On the kitchen counter, a cracked phone, last message unsent, we need to talk about what she said last night. In the trash, a half-torn note, they won't forgive me now. And tucked behind a tissue box, a positive pregnancy test. Detective Moore stared at it for a long moment before passing it wordlessly to the evidence tech. Her jaw clenched, but she said nothing. She didn't have to. Outside, neighbors gathered behind yellow tape, whispering prayers, clutching hands. Some remembered June rocking the twins on that same porch years ago. Others couldn't bring themselves to look. In small-town Texas, everyone knows your story, until they realize they never really did. As the coroner's van pulled away, the setting sun cast the house in gold for a moment, the way it used to look before everything turned. Sirens flickered against the windows like ghosts refusing to leave. Detective Moore stood in the doorway a moment longer, staring at the swing that still moved on its own. Whatever happened inside this house, she knew, didn't happen overnight. It had been growing, quietly, patiently, for decades. The truth wouldn't come from words. It would come from evidence. And somewhere, deep inside a test tube waiting in the county lab, the real story of the Patterson family was about to speak. By dawn, the yellow tape still fluttered outside the Patterson house, catching the pale Texas light. The road was quiet now, but the silence felt different, no longer grief, but waiting. Inside those walls, everything the family tried to hide was beginning to speak. Paramedics had taken June Patterson out just before sunrise. She was barely breathing, her pulse faint, her clothes soaked with liquor and cleaning fluid. By the time the sun rose over Willow Creek, she lay sedated under guard at County General Hospital, her wrists handcuffed to the bed rail, her body weak, her silence stronger. Detectives tried to question her twice that morning. Both times, she turned her face to the wall and said nothing. Back at the precinct, the evidence room glowed under fluorescent light. Brown paper bags. Labeled boxes. The smell of latex and coffee. Detective Carla Moore stood at the center of it, reading the first reports. No forced entry. No foreign fingerprints. No signs of outside intrusion. Everything pointed inward. And yet, the motive was missing. The twins. Malik and Miles were 21, no criminal record, no enemies. There were no debts, no fights, no signs of self-defense. So why were they dead, and their grandmother alive? The first answers came not from confession, but from chemistry. At the state crime lab in Austin, technicians worked through the night processing biological evidence, swabs from the bed sheets, sink, and bathroom counter. Early tox screens showed high levels of alcohol and traces of a common sleep medication in all three victims. The scene's bleach residue had destroyed much, but not everything. Preliminary results arrived 72 hours later. Carla was there when the email came through. She opened it slowly, scanning line by line until her hand froze. The pregnancy test found in the house contained June Patterson's DNA. That alone was shocking, a 56-year-old woman showing elevated hormone levels consistent with recent conception. But the report wasn't finished. A second genetic profile was found in the same sample, male, first-degree relative. The probability, 99.97% match to one of the deceased twins. Carla read the line again. The room went silent. It wasn't just homicide anymore. It was revelation. By morning, the State Bureau had joined the case. All files were sealed. Media blackout imposed. No one spoke above a whisper. Detectives reconstructed the final 48 hours. Security footage placed the twins arriving home at 11:32 p.m., calm, carrying takeout bags. No visible distress. Phone records showed 2 late-night calls between June and Miles, both deleted before dawn. And the living room clock, frozen at 2:47 a.m., lined up with the coroner's estimate of time of death. The coroner's preliminary report was clinical but haunting. Cause of death, respiratory failure due to sedative overdose. Manner, homicide. Toxicology, presence of ethanol and zolpidem in all victims. In other words, they were drugged before they stopped breathing. Carla closed the folder and stared at the wall for a long moment. She'd seen every kind of murder, greed, rage, revenge, but never this. When June regained consciousness 5 days later, Carla was waiting. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't even sit. "June. We found everything we need," she said softly. "But I need to understand, why?" June's eyes fluttered open, dull, unfocused. Her lips trembled once before forming words. "They said they'd leave me. Just that." 6 words. And then silence again. Psychologists later called it a disordered attachment pattern, a trauma that began with abandonment at 16 and metastasized into control, dependency, and delusion. She'd already lost one child to distance. Losing the twins was something her mind refused to accept. But forensic science doesn't speak the language of heartbreak. The technicians processed the last round of samples, 3 mugs from the kitchen table, all containing trace sedatives. Only one, June's, showed wiped prints. It was enough for a warrant. By the following week, headlines blazed across the state. DNA shock in Texas family murders. Grandmother implicated in deaths of twin grandsons. Reporters swarmed the station, shouting questions. Carla closed the blinds. She didn't see scandal, only tragedy. The same cycle she'd watched in her own community for years: love twisted into control, silence mistaken for strength, pain passed down until it killed. The forensics told one truth. The psychology told another. Together, they built a story too heavy to carry but too real to ignore. And when the final evidence bag was sealed, the lights of the lab flickered once, the hum of machines steady, the air thick with quiet finality. The truth was no longer hidden. It was logged, tagged, and ready for trial. 5 days after the warrant was signed, the cameras came. The world had finally learned the secret that only the evidence had known. Outside the county courthouse, reporters crowded behind metal rails, flashes of white light slicing through the morning air. Headlines used words no one in Willow Creek had ever imagined: twins, DNA, betrayal. Inside, beneath the hum of flickering lights, June Patterson sat alone in an interrogation room. Her wrists were cuffed to the table. Her eyes were red, her skin pale. She looked smaller now, not the matriarch the neighborhood once called Mama June, but a woman hollowed out by silence. Detective Carla Moore walked in quietly, closing the door behind her. The clock read 10:15 a.m., interview room 2. She set a folder on the table and placed a styrofoam cup of coffee beside it. "You remember me, don't you?" she asked softly. June nodded. "You were the one at the house." "That's right." "I don't want to talk about that house," June murmured. Carla let the silence breathe. Good detectives know silence does the work words can't. Finally, she spoke. "We got the lab results, June. Everything from that house, the mugs, the note, the DNA. It all tells one story." June's fingers twitched. "I don't care what it says." "You should," Carla replied evenly. "Because the evidence doesn't lie." For a moment, nothing moved. Then June exhaled, slow, fragile, almost broken. "They weren't supposed to die," she whispered. Carla leaned forward. "Then tell me what was supposed to happen." June's voice trembled. "They said they were leaving. Both of them. Said they were tired of living with me. Tired of my rules. Tired of being reminded who raised them. Her breath hitched. They said they didn't need me anymore. Carla said nothing. She just waited. I made dinner that night, June continued. I wanted it to feel normal. I even put on that record Miles liked, the one with the crack at the end. We laughed. We really did. She paused, eyes distant. I poured the drinks, just enough to calm them down. And me too. I didn't think it would hurt them. I just wanted the noise to stop. Her voice cracked. They fell asleep. That's all I wanted, one quiet night. Carla's tone softened. And the test, June? What was that? Silence. The air between them thickened. The tape recorder clicked once, recording everything. I didn't mean for that to happen either, June finally whispered. I just thought, if I could make them stay, maybe everything would stop hurting. The words hung in the cold air like smoke. Carla didn't rush. She looked at June, not with anger, but with a kind of weary understanding only sorrow can teach. June, she said quietly, what you did, you know it can't be undone. June stared at her trembling hands. You ever love someone so much you feel them slipping, and you'd do anything to make it stop? Carla didn't answer. She'd heard every kind of confession, rage, greed, jealousy, but this was different. This was love corrupted by fear. She reached into the folder and slid a photograph across the table, the twins as teenagers, smiling on the porch, sunlight catching their faces. They loved you, Carla said. You know that, right? June's eyes filled with tears. She reached for the photo, but the cuff stopped her short. The metal clinked against the table, small, sharp, final. They called me Mama June, she whispered. Said no one else understood them. She swallowed hard. But they were wrong. I didn't understand them either. Carla stood slowly. We're done for now. June didn't look up. She kept staring at the photo, lips moving without sound. Outside the one-way glass, the assistant district attorney leaned toward Carla. That's it, he said quietly. We've got enough. The statement meets admissibility. But Carla didn't respond. She just stood there, watching through the glass, a detective looking at a woman who had lost everything she ever tried to keep. Later that evening, in her office, Carla typed her final case summary. Subject exhibits obsessive attachment and fear of abandonment. Crime appears premeditated but motivated by emotional collapse rather than malice. Act performed under distorted belief of preserving family unity. She hesitated before typing the final line. Then added. Motive, love, mistaken for control. Outside, rain began to fall, soft, steady, cleansing nothing. The recording of the interrogation sat on her desk, marked Exhibit 22. In the background, June's voice could still be heard, faint but unbroken. They said they'd leave me. That voice would later echo in court, replayed again and again. The sound of love admitting guilt. 7 months after the confession, after hearings, evaluations, and endless speculation, the trial of June Patterson began beneath the heavy Texas summer heat. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed like lightning. Protesters prayed on one side of the steps, others demanded justice. Inside, every seat was filled. June entered in a gray prison uniform, wrists trembling as she faced 12 strangers who would decide the rest of her life. She kept her eyes on the floor, never once looking at the cameras. The prosecution built its case on science. Slides of DNA charts illuminated the courtroom wall. Analysts testified to a 99.97% genetic match between June and one of the twins. Toxicologists explained how alcohol and sedatives, when combined, can still the lungs within minutes. Each fact stripped the tragedy of emotion and left only evidence. The defense asked for mercy. Their psychologist traced June's life from teenage motherhood to years of abandonment, calling her a woman drowning in the same water she was born into. They admitted guilt but argued absence of malice, that the act came from fear, not hatred. Detective Carla Moore was the final witness. She spoke softly, eyes fixed on the jury. She couldn't stand to lose them, Carla said. And in trying to keep them, she lost everything. One juror wiped a tear. Another stared at the floor. After 9 hours of deliberation, the verdict came back, guilty on 2 counts of second-degree murder. The judge's sentence followed quickly, 2 consecutive life terms, parole possible at 85. June rose as the gavel struck once. She didn't cry. As deputies led her away, she looked toward Carla, 1 second of shared exhaustion between the woman who sought truth and the woman who destroyed it. The thunder that rolled outside sounded almost like applause, almost like mourning. When the courtroom emptied, dust hung in the air, drifting through a shaft of light where the twins' photo had been shown moments earlier. And for the first time in months, the room was completely silent. The Patterson house still stands on Willow Creek Road, paint peeling, porch swing rusted, windows clouded with dust. No one lives there now, yet neighbors say they sometimes smell lavender when the wind shifts. Each year, LaToya Patterson visits the porch with 2 candles. She never stays long. Some stories, she told a reporter once, don't need retelling. They just need remembering. Detective Carla Moore retired 2 years later. The photograph of Malik and Miles still sits on her desk. When asked why she never removed it, she said, "Because it wasn't about evil. It was about fear, and what fear becomes when love loses its way." The Patterson case became a cautionary tale in training seminars across Texas, a study in generational trauma and the fragile line between devotion and control. As dusk settles over Willow Creek, the house remains, a quiet monument to what happens when pain is mistaken for purpose. And so the story ends where it began, with laughter once echoing through a Texas home, and silence taking its place.